yards for a little bit of story time. And the story is going to illustrate why I use these in the first place. That would be a Hinge release instead of anything else. I started off with index finger releases, then went to thumb buttons, and then found the almighty Hinge. Story starts like this. I was a marksman before I was a hunter, okay? Grown up around firearms, bows, stuff like that, for pretty much my entire childhood, my entire life. I was a marksman before I ever went out and killed my first animal, so it was kind of the opposite of what most people's story is. They go out hunting and then they raise up their skills with bows, guns, firearms, whatever. Mine was the opposite. I went the precision route first and then became a hunter later on in life. So when it came to harvesting my first deer, I did it with a 44 Magnum revolver. It's a Ruger Red Hawk, and I still use it to this day. It's a fantastic deer firearm, especially for the thick woods of Ohio out east. And I'll tell you what, with the custom loads that I put through that thing, the deer that I've hit, the multiple deer that I've hit in the right spot have gone down immediately. It really, really tears them up, and you get a nice, very quick ethical kill with 44 Magnum. That being said, 44 Magnum is probably, especially in handgun form, is probably one of the tougher things that you're going to have to hunt with outside of a bow. And that's because 44 Magnum is a very, very powerful round. I know that there are a lot more powerful rounds out there, like 500 Smith & Wesson or 460 S&W, 454 Casull, but 44 Magnum is no slouch, and it does have quite a bit of recoil. Reason why I'm telling you this is because I got my first deer with 44 Magnum revolver, and it was 15 feet directly below me. That's it. It was that easy. Next deer I think was a little bit closer, but it was right underneath my stand as well. And then my third deer was something like 65 yards away, and I was in what they call the condo, the place where I gun hunt, and it's this little shack where the front opens up, and you just kind of shoot out of that. It's on a hillside, looking down through woods. 65 yards away, I was able to brace for it, so put the gun on shooting sticks, and then got a nice clean trigger pull. Deer went down immediately. Funny story about that. When we got to the deer, there was no blood. None. There was nothing to suggest that a bullet had hit that deer. And yet, that deer went down immediately. We looked on that thing, my dad and I looked on that thing for 10 minutes. We couldn't find an ounce of blood, an entrance wound, or an exit wound. I thought the deer had died of a heart attack. Until my dad rolled that deer over a couple of times and found the bullet just ever so slightly pushing against the skin on the backside of the deer, where the exit wound would have been had the bullet gone all the way through. So we found where the skin had caught that bullet, and we looked on the other side, and it was a perfect broadside shot. We found the bullet on the other side. We went directly to the other side and looked for an entrance wound. We could not find it. No entrance wound at all, nothing. We looked underneath the fur, went through the skin, couldn't find it. Finally, I cut the bullet out of the other side, and it was perfect mushroom, exactly like a hollow point should, and you know, got a nice, clean, ethical kill with that. Now, when we did open the deer up, the cavity was just full of blood. So, you know that round did its job. It's just one of those things where it did not it didn't go all the way through. It mushroomed, slowed right down, and that entrance wound opened up and then closed right back behind it with no blood whatsoever. Anyways, those are my first, 3 deer, something like that. And then I got into archery hunting after that, because in Ohio you only have a week plus a bonus weekend to harvest a deer with a gun, and I wanted more opportunity with that. So that's why I went full archery hunting. Never looked back. I love it. I will still hunt with a 44 Magnum, but it's just so much fun to hunt with this, and it gives me a lot more opportunity to hunt. Now, reason why I'm telling you this story is after my 3rd deer, I went out with a 44 Magnum the next year, and I had an opportunity to kill a deer in basically the same spot as the last deer. Plenty of time, broadside shot, nothing in the way. I missed. And not only that, but the deer didn't run away. It just stood there. So I cocked in another round and took my time, let it go again, and I missed again. Deer still didn't run away. But what it did do was walk very, very leisurely to a portion of trees where I couldn't shoot at it. And then it just stared at me, as if it was saying, fuck you, you shot at me, so now I'm going to taunt you. I was really pissed off after that. So I went out to the range after that, and I put in a couple of those, custom rounds, because we reload at home. What happened next taught me a lot about marksmanship. I went to the range after that, and I set up a target at like 50 yards away, and I missed. I've hit targets further away than this. What is going on? So I cocked in another round, and it just so happened that on the next round, the primer was a dud. So it didn't go off, and my reticle went into the dirt. I was flinching and anticipating and punching that trigger, and I didn't even know it. It's easy to do on a 44 Magnum, okay? And that's what was causing me to miss. And the thing about that is, the more you shoot like that, the worse that gets. The worse your trigger punching gets, especially with a 44 Magnum. Now think about this right here, okay, where everything has to line up, okay? Let's take a shot at 70, and then I'll tell you what I did to combat that with a 44 Magnum that helped me with my archery. Missed. Hit. Okay, 2 out of 3. It's all right. So what I did to combat that, what I did to fix that was I was determined that I was going to let that happen again. And the only way to become more precise, more accurate with a pistol like that is to train like you're going to flinch every single time. And I worded that terribly, but is to train to combat your flinch, okay? Train to combat your anticipation of that trigger going off. So what I did was, and I only did this when I was alone at a range or in a field pasture on a farm where I was allowed to shoot. What I did was it's a revolver, so it's got a cylinder, 6 shots in it. So what I would do is I would get 2 rounds in my hand. I'd open that cylinder. I'd look up at the target, spin the cylinder around, and deposit a round wherever it went into the chamber. Didn't look down at it. Again, I would spin the chamber and put a round in wherever it wanted to go. Okay? I'd close the cylinder, and I'd keep my eyes on the target, and then I would bring the 44 Magnum up, and it's got a scope on it, so brought it up. No way to tell for me where a round is in the cylinder. Again, I don't know that I would recommend this for anybody, but it's just the way I trained to shoot a 44 Magnum. I only did this when I was, alone or had a lot of space around me, or people that I trusted around me. To where I was cool with them letting me do this. So I had no idea where a round was in that cylinder. Okay. So what I would work on is I would work on pulling that trigger as slowly as I could, squeezing it, keeping that reticle on target, and when that trigger broke, the only movement I should see is from where the hammer came down, smacked the firing pin, and then caused the gun to move. The gun was going to move, because that hammer's really heavy, but what I shouldn't see is that pistol coming all the way down like this. And I'll tell you what, it worked, okay? Because that first one, where you come off and there's no round in the chamber and you flinch, oh my gosh, it makes you so mad, and it makes you determined to just focus on squeezing that trigger. And I'll tell you what, it's like there were times where I would be all the way at the beginning of the cylinder and the rounds would be right next to each other all the way at the end. And each one of those things, it's nerve-wracking to pull that trigger. But I got really, really good at controlling my anticipation. And sometimes in that cylinder, it'd be the first round. And then the next round wouldn't be until the very end. So it's a good test for if you get it on the first round and it goes off and it hits the target, okay, did something right there. Pull back the hammer, and on the next round, if that reticle only jumps because that hammer hit the firing pin, that's a success. You know you're doing it right. And then you get all the way through the cylinder, get to whichever one has the next round in it, and it hits the target. And I'll tell you what, I got to a point where I could take that 44 Magnum, braced obviously on a shooting bag. I could get it out to 150 yards and hit a paper plate sized target. Now that 44 Magnum had almost no energy at 150 yards, but I wasn't planning on hitting anything at 150 yards in terms of hunting. That was just to see, because if you can hit something at 150 yards, you can hit it at 40. That's how I trained to combat my flinch on a very, very powerful handgun. It was training in a way where if I flinched, I knew it. And you can't really do that if you load the cylinder up with a whole bunch of rounds and know exactly how many rounds are in that, because you're going to start flinching at some point, and you're going to start missing, and unless you get an empty chamber and start flinching and flinch on that one, you're not going to really know if you're flinching or not. It's the exact same principle with a bow, okay? If you are anticipating that bow going off because you've got an index finger release or a thumb button release, it's exactly the same thing. And I don't know why people don't understand that. It is exactly the same principle. You will start anticipating the trigger, and you will start punching it, and you will start moving your entire body in anticipation of that shot going off. It is exactly the same principle, and it is exactly why I use one of these, because this thing makes me control this thing makes me control the entire shot process all the way up until it breaks. So that's kind of my experience with punching the trigger and how a hinge has really helped me. I'm going to give you another example as we load up for another round. Okay, so that is my personal testimonial about how hinges have really helped me with punching the trigger. I'm going to tell you another story real quick about something I saw a couple of weeks ago, okay? I was involved with teaching an archery class, and a guy came in to help us out and help us teach some kids archery. And it's very clear that this guy's been an archer for a long time. He's got a compound bow just like I do. He's got at least the equipment on face value looks like he knows what he's doing. He's got a really nice setup, and he's got a lot of stories about going hunting and stuff like that, and doing competition archery. I don't think he was ranked or anything like that, but anyways, he's done all that. Unless he was lying, he could have been, but I don't think so. I was watching him shoot, and I noticed that he had a Carter thumb button release, okay? It was, I forget which one it was, I'll put it up on the screen. Anyways, it was thumb button release, and I was watching him shoot, and he did okay for the first couple of ends, and then everything started going wrong, just like it did with me, okay? And I watched him shoot, and every fourth shot he did, okay, he would have the bow up here like this. He had a nice smooth draw, nice anchor point, and every fourth shot he would do basically one of these. That release wasn't going off when he thought it was going to go off, and his entire body moved. His entire body flinched because he was anticipating that bow going off, okay? I don't care who you are. If your entire body is moving like this in anticipation of that thing going off, you're going to have some serious issues when it comes to precision and accuracy with a bow, okay? And I told him, I was like, man, how do you shoot with that thumb button release? He's like, oh, it's the only thing I can shoot with. And I'm like, and I was like, have you ever considered a hinge? He's like, oh, I don't shoot hinges. I don't touch those things. And I was like, man, you need to. I didn't say that out loud because, you know, I don't like to be that person where it's like, hey, you're doing something wrong and I'm going to come up and tell you about it. I mean, he sounded he was kind of frustrated with himself, but I mean, it's one of those things where in that scenario, it's not my place to tell him what to do. It's not my place to, tell him what he's doing wrong. Also, there are a lot of people out there who will come up to you on a range and tell you about stuff that are full of shit. And, I don't want to look like that guy. If someone asks me, hey, what do you think I'm doing wrong? I will give them my opinion. If they don't like it, they've asked for it, so whatever. But, again, I really wish I could tell that dude, your entire body is flinching when you try to pull that trigger and it's not going off. What do you think it's doing to your shot? So, again, I was one of those people. I can't tell that guy like, oh, you're dysfunctional in some way because you're doing that. That was literally me before I got into hinges. It was literally me. Like I had that happen a couple of times where that release did not go off when I expected it to, and it was very much the same reaction where my bow came down and it was like, it was, when that happens, you just like, ooh, it gets into your head. It gets into your head so hard and just burrows right down in there, and you just don't have a good time after that. Shooting is not enjoyable after that. So that's another story of a guy who, he's been in archery for a really long time, and I just want to tell him, like, hey, you need to go back to the basics of your shot process. And you may not need to change as much as you think you do, but you obviously have some issues with slapping the trigger, and you need to get away from that. You need to get into a system where this thing is not going to allow you to slap the trigger. And it's gonna make you pull against that back wall. And there was a couple of times where he lost that back wall, and that string started to come forward, and he caught it and brought it back. And I was watching him, and I was hurting for him. I was like, man, I wish I could tell you how a hinge helped me and why you need to switch to one. But yeah, that's another story about, I don't know if you could call it an epiphany, but I need hinges in order to function in archery without slapping the trigger and going all over the place and getting into bad habits. So anyways, that's my testimonial about hinges, why I shoot them, why I think a lot more people should shoot them, at least train with them, and why they're not as scary as you think they are. They're not scary. As long as you set them up to be super cold in the beginning so that they don't rip it back and it goes off when they're going, trust me, it will help all of you out, and it will make you better archers. It will make you more consistent, and it'll make you a better hunter as well. So that's my opinion. That's my thoughts about hinge releases and why I use them, and why I think everybody should get into them. So let's shoot another end at 70 so that I can possibly redeem myself for the 2 out of 3 on the target at 70. Let's do that right now. You might not be able to see it, but listen for the sound. 3 out of 3. That makes me happy. I had to hold on the right side of the target to get a hit, but that's 70 yards. I don't know if that's my sight being off to the left or whether that's the wind. We do have a slow breeze coming through here, but anyways, let's go check it out. I'm shooting much better than I was when I got here. So, camera did well today. Got very, very hot, but I'm only filming in 1080p, so it should be fine. It shouldn't overheat, but you never know, because it is Arizona, and it's a pretty much cloudless day, just like it is every single day, which I love. Okay, so don't judge me too hard. And this wasn't in focus at any point during this walk, was it? No, it wasn't. God damn it. Okay, don't judge me too hard for this. That's okay. 74 yards. About a paper plate. I'm okay with that. That's something to build off of. I just need to get more consistent about coming out here and practicing. So, all right. I think I got a lot accomplished today. I filmed all 3 of those videos at the same time. They're going to come out. They came out on different dates, but I filmed everything on the same day, which is something that I'm probably going to start doing here. It's just better for me in terms of time usage and time management. So, broadhead test, B3 archery tangent video, and then why I use a hinge. It was a good day, and this is why I use a hinge, because I wouldn't be able to do that with a thumb button, especially after shooting all day. That's the thing that gets me about the hinge, is that, you know, I'm going to shoot the same way all day. And whereas with a thumb button or an index finger release, it's going to get worse as the day goes on, the more I shoot. So it keeps me consistent all day. That's reason enough to switch to one. I highly recommend you switch to a hinge, at least train with it, because of the reasons why I just went through. But anyways, that's my rant. That's my long, probably too long video of the day. Switch to a hinge. I don't think you'll look back, and it's not as dangerous or as scary as you think it is. I'll see you next time. Thank you so much.